I blinked open my eyes. Whoa, my head felt dizzy. And, why was I covered in scratches? My mind was totally blank. I couldn't remember what happened. The last picture flashing through my mind was a heated argument between me and some guy. Then I stormed off and now, here I am, in this gloomy place. I think it's a basement or something. It's cold, and it stinks of damp. Dang it! I cannot remember his face. I knew I needed to get out of here, and fast. I ran to the door and tried opening it, but to no avail. It's locked. I slammed my hands against the door and shouted, "Anyone? Help!" I could hear footsteps approaching, so ignoring my throbbing palms and burning throat, I banged on the door and screamed out, "Open the door!" Oh my God! It's him! The guy I'd been arguing with before! He was holding a sandwich and smiling gently at me. "Oh, Alice, my puppy. Are you awake? I thought you might be hungry." "Who are you? You brought me here, didn't you? What do you want?" He looked confused, then sadly blurted out, "Oh no, honey. You must have memory loss from the accident. It's your Josh here. I'm your boyfriend." I squinted at him. He did look familiar, but what boyfriend? What accident? He showed me the photos on his phone. OMG! That was me with him, and we looked so happy together. But why can't I remember anything? I hit my head with my hands in frustration, while Josh just stood there against the wall staring at me and giggling. So maybe this Josh guy was my boyfriend, but that didn't explain why he'd locked me up in this dungeon. This wasn't a normal boyfriend thing to do. I rushed to the door, but he grabbed me in his arms. "Let me out! You definitely have some wicked intention going on bringing me here." I scowled. "Oh my gosh, Alice, you've been watching too many movies. Do you really not remember anything?" I gave him a clearly not look, then folded my arms. "I guess the accident was pretty intense. We argued, then you insisted on driving while you were drunk, and then caused a fatal accident. Never mind. I think we shouldn't go in too deep about that right now. It must be traumatizing for you. But that's why I decided to bring you here, so the cops wouldn't arrest you." What? Why couldn't I remember such a horrible thing? But looking at all the wounds on my face and body, maybe everything was exactly like what Josh said. No! I have to confess. I stuttered in tears. "Are you crazy? Do you want to go to jail?" But... Alice, no buts. I'm gonna protect you and keep you safe." This was a lot to process, so in a moment of panic, I found myself agreeing to his crazy plan. Josh said this was an emergency bunker back from his grandfather's time. Sure thing. I mean, it sure smelled musty. There's not even a window, just a flickering wall light. It felt like I was in a horror movie. Josh also told me that he'd taken my phone off me, so the cops wouldn't be able to trace it and arrest us both. And that's it. Every morning, noon, and night, Josh would bring me food and talk to me about his day. "Puppy, I'm home." Puppy? Oh, it sounded cute at first, but I soon became allergic to that word. "Hey, puppy, eat this. Puppy this, puppy that. Puppy, puppy, puppy." I was so fed up with the word puppy that at times I actually thought I was nothing more than a pet to him. Then each night, he insisted on rubbing my back so I'd fall asleep more easily. Sounds nice, right? But no, it wasn't. He rubbed it really hard, and when I asked him to stop, he just laughed. Obviously, he wasn't doing it to make me feel better, but regarded it as a pastime. Ugh! And that's not all. A few times, I'd wake up to see him sitting there, staring at me with this gummy grin on his face. Then, when I checked my hair, I saw that he'd tied loads of these dumb little bows in it. "Are you crazy? I'm not a kid!" I grumbled while pulling and throwing all those dumb things out of my head. "But puppy, they look so cute. Tom always liked them." I glared at him. Didn't bother saying anything anymore. Oh, and FYI, yes, Tom's his old dog's name. Okay, so I didn't need a genius to figure out that something was seriously up with this guy's head. But then, things got weirder. One time, he brought down food for us to eat together. It was fried chicken, and as soon as I smelt it, my eyes sparkled. I was about to take a piece when suddenly he pulled the plate away and took a big bite. I didn't even have time to react. Then he handed me the chicken thigh bone he hadn't finished yet. "Help me with the rest, puppy. This part is too hard to gnaw." I rolled my eyes at him and flushed up with anger. Seeing my reaction, he said, "What's wrong, puppy? Tom always loved the leftovers." "Are you crazy?" I screamed. "Yo, I'm kidding. Don't you know how to take a joke?" He grinned. Kidding? What kind of kidding is that? I've had enough of this. This place was driving me insane. I could hardly sleep at all because I couldn't even distinguish between day and night. Then, when I did close my eyes, I found myself tormented by the serious crime I'd committed. Josh was trying to save me. Yes, but I didn't ask him to do that. I couldn't live like this. I needed to face the truth. I had to turn myself in. The next morning, when Josh brought me breakfast, I told him what I wanted to do. Expectedly, he got mad and glared at me. "Alice, why do you want to go to jail so badly?" "I can't stay here forever. I have to face up to what I've done." "But it's so peaceful here with me." Peaceful? Was he being serious? It sure didn't feel peaceful. Instead, I felt like I was playing the role of his pet. I lurched forward, but Josh immediately grabbed me so I couldn't move. I tried squirming my way free, but he was a strong guy. Suddenly, he covered my nose with a handkerchief and my eyes closed. Then everything turned black. I slowly opened my eyes. I was in the same familiar room, but bars. I saw bars! Ugh! I was in a cage! Then I kicked something. It was a water bowl! "Puppy, you're so naughty. I can't lose you, so I've put you in here." He grinned at me as he handed me a sandwich. I chucked it away, then screamed at him to let me out. Seeing this, he immediately left and returned with a bunch of plush toys and dropped them in the cage. "Hope they'll make you happier." Then he tried to stuff the sandwich into my mouth. Furiously, I took a bite and spat it in his face, then sneered while throwing the toys at him. Jeez, some of them even squeaked. "Wow, okay." His demeanor changed, and his eyes turned scary. "If that's what you want, don't blame me later." Things were different after that. Each day, he only gave me a bowl of those gross-smelling biscuits, then he'd just sit there gawping at me. At first, I refused to eat them. But in the end, I was so exhausted that I gave in, even though I'm pretty sure they were dog biscuits. Ugh! I realized that resisting him wasn't benefiting me at all. It was only making him act more horrible. That's when a genius plan popped into my head. So the next time when Josh appeared with the biscuits, I smiled sweetly at him and said, "Josh, baby, it's been so long since we've been on a date. How about you go and get us a bottle of wine, and we can spend some quality time together?" His eyes lit up, and of course, he agreed without hesitation. He hurried off to get the wine. "Cheers to us!" "Josh, you're the love of my life, and I'm so grateful to God for bringing you into my life. Please stay with me forever." I flashed a sweet smile and whispered in his ear. Every time he took a sip of wine, I fluttered my eyelashes at him as I refilled his glass. To say I'm a Hollywood actress with an Oscar-worthy performance would be an understatement. Soon, Josh was so drunk he went cross-eyed. He fell to the ground before I even finished pouring him the last glass of wine. Seizing the opportunity, I stepped over him to get out, when suddenly, a hand grabbed my ankle. Oh no, I'm screwed! My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. I immediately turned around, ready to fight him when, well, it turned out he was just dreaming. Phew. Thank God. I gently pulled my foot free and immediately dashed out of there. I climbed up the stairs to a living room where I found my phone left on the table. I quickly grabbed it and ran out of that horrible house. My legs trembled, and I felt like they might give away beneath me at any second. But somehow, I managed to find the inner strength to keep on running. I couldn't use my phone as it was out of battery, and I was too disoriented to figure out where my home was. So, when I stumbled upon a police station, I walked toward it. I took a deep breath. This was a tough decision. I knew I was going to jail, but I couldn't live in creepy Josh's basement forever and be his substitute pet. No thanks. I had to face up to what I'd done. Sir, I'm here to confess. The cop looked confused and told me there hadn't been a fatal accident recently. But then he said I looked familiar, so he looked up my name, and turns out my family had reported me missing. That liar Josh had tricked me. It was all a ruse so he could imprison me. How vile! I charged my phone, and up popped hundreds of messages and voicemails from my worried friends and relatives. This was all so overwhelming. I put my head down for a moment. Then all the memories gradually surfaced. I'd been in the mall parking lot, and I felt like someone was following me. So I hid in the corner, and that's when Josh appeared. So I asked him, "Why are you following me?" "Alice, I love you. Please come back to me." I rolled my eyes and started walking away from him. "Go away, weirdo! We're done!" Then he grabbed my shoulder. I shook myself free and ran away, when a car came out of nowhere and... Ugh! Yes, of course. Josh was my crazy, controlling stalker ex. So he must have taken advantage of my unconsciousness to take me back to his basement and come up with his bonkers plan. Then to make things even easier for him, I ended up with memory loss. Typical! It was a nightmare. But thankfully, it's over now. The cops took my statement, and soon after that, my family came to pick me up. They all burst out crying, and we hugged each other tightly. It's taking a while to get back to normal life after all the trauma, but I'm getting there. I do want to vomit whenever I hear anyone say the word puppy. Ugh. However, this didn't stop me from getting my own rescue dog, Lily the Corgi, and I never put bows in her fur. As for Josh, well, he was convicted for false imprisonment and has to stay in jail for 4 years. Who's in the cage now? Serves you right. I can't believe it's been a year since Gerald passed away. I know it's been hard, but on the bright side, at least you still have your 2 wonderful daughters. Thank you. She smiled. Then she rubbed Jamie's head. I'm very proud of this one. Yeah. Jamie's pretty, Jamie's girly, Jamie's adorable. And I was just the other child. I watched on as the 3 of them relaxed on the porch, giggling about dumb stuff and enjoying their lemonade, while I struggled with the stupid lawnmower. They didn't even notice me. I quickly finished up. Then I grabbed my skateboard and hurried out of there. Charlotte, stop right there. And where exactly do you think you're going without my permission? Skateboarding. I grumbled, then left. Whatever. She didn't care anyway. She just wanted to suffocate me. It wasn't like this back when I had Dad on my side. As you can see, I'm not a girly girl. All that manicure and makeup stuff just seems like nonsense to me. But my non-identical twin, Jamie, lives for it. She always wakes up extra early just so she has more time to style her hair, apply her makeup, and pick out her daily outfit. Then all she does at school is sit around with the other Barbies and giggle at pretty much everything. But guess that's the kind of girl Mom prefers, as it's blatantly clear that Jamie's her favorite. It's always me who had to do all the chores in the house, just so her Jamie could sit there scrolling through her phone. There was one time when I was washing the dishes, I heard a deafening shriek. No, my sister wasn't being murdered. Instead, there was a spider crawling across the floor. Poof! It was just a spider. Nuts! I didn't want to be a chore slave. I just wanted to skateboard. Yeah, skateboarding and painting are my true passions, but Mom told me skateboarding was for boys. Ugh, how ridiculous! So I often snuck out. There were times I got so into it that I lost track of time and arrived home to Mom's furious eyes. You're grounded. Next time, I won't hesitate in breaking your boards in half. Jeez, that was so unfair. I pushed past her and ran into my room. Then, clutching my board, I burst into tears. I wish Dad was still here. Whenever Mom and I argued, he always came up to my room and told me how Mom only acted the way she did because she cares about me. She just has a different way of showing it. It's been a whole year since he passed, all because of a freak accident at the factory he worked in. Now, we all had to rely on Mom's home tailor job, and I just became the errand girl, while Jamie sits around looking pretty. Worse still, Mom insisted I get a part-time job to support the family, while Jamie didn't have to. When I questioned Mom on this, she just said, Jamie isn't like you. She wouldn't be able to handle both school and work. Excuse me, what? But I knew arguing with Mom about it was pointless. Anyways, it all worked out okay, as I landed myself a job in this cool skateboard store. Oh, and also, less house chores. One rainy afternoon, the store was quiet, so I took out my sketchbook and designed some skateboards. Then my manager, Rick, peered over my shoulder. Uh-oh, was I in trouble? But to my surprise, he said, That's pretty good. Then he passed me a flyer for a skateboard designing contest. You should give it a try. This contest was meant to be, so I spent all my free time shut away in my room working on my design. I didn't see Mom or Jamie for a full week. How peaceful. And guess what? I won first prize. It was awesome. However, Mom snatched the prize money from me due to family financial reasons. So my money was going to be used on new clothes and makeup for Jamie. Unbelievable! I didn't want to be under this roof anymore. But at 15, where else could I go? Poof. Then Mom told me her work was slow at the moment, so I should enter more contests to support my family. Hey, it got me out of chores, so I agreed to it. And I pretty much won all of them. But it did annoy me that I didn't get to keep my rewards. Then when I saw Jamie showing off her new shoes, I just wanted to yank them off her feet and throw them at her. Ugh! I thought twins were meant to have some sort of deep connection or something. Not me and Jamie. We couldn't be more different. Finally, I had a day off, so I arranged to go skateboarding with Rick. I grabbed my board and was about to leave when Mom blocked the door. Charlotte, where do you think you're going? Jamie has a date tomorrow, and her dress needs hand washing. What? This was ridiculous. I rolled my eyes and said, In that case, she can wash it herself. Don't take that attitude with me, young lady. You'll do as you're told. Through angry sobs, I screamed at her. I wish you weren't my mom! Then I ran upstairs to my room. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. My mom calmed down, cleared her throat, and opened the door. Huh? Why was there an expensive-looking car in our driveway? And why was a wealthy-looking couple standing on the doorstep? Curious, I hid behind the wall to see who they were and what they were here for. From my eavesdropping, I found out that the couple was the Barnes. They'd just retired from their jobs working for the government in the Secret Intelligence Department. Mom and Mrs. Barnes were besties in high school, so when they both fell pregnant at the same time, Mom offered to bring their daughter up as her own, so they could go and work away on their secret mission. We've both taken early retirement, and we can finally enjoy life. We're very grateful to both you and Gerald for looking after our daughter, but we're here to take her home now. Oh my God! Turns out, one of us was adopted! No wonder we were nothing alike. But was it Jamie or me? Could it be me? I mean, Mom always preferred Jamie, so she could be her biological daughter. I knew they were my real parents. I could feel it. So taking a deep breath, I nervously stepped out to meet them. Jamie, come down here, sweetie. Mom called, and I froze on the spot. I watched on as Jamie appeared, and Mom introduced her to her real parents. She didn't even seem surprised. She just replied, "Yes, I know," then sweetly grinned. I'm so happy that I can finally meet you both. The Barnes cooed over Jamie like she was a puppy or something. Then they got emotional and all. Ugh, it made me want to puke. I ran up to my room, locked the door, and cried. Life was so unfair. Jamie was always the lucky one, while I always got the raw deal out of things. I must have cried myself to sleep, as when I woke up, it was morning. I reached for my phone. Jamie had messaged me. It's sad you missed my farewell dinner. I had a great time living with you. Come and hang out sometime, okay? Poof! I aggressively threw my phone down onto my bed. Bold of her to assume I would ever want to hang out with her. We had nothing in common. Luck alone was an example. Life went on, but without Jamie, as she moved to some rich kid's school. And I continued going to school, work, sneaking out to skateboard, and avoiding Mom as much as possible. Then one chemistry class, while we were carrying out an experiment in the lab, one of my classmates made a mistake. And boom! We were all left looking like Cinderella. And that might have actually been the best thing of that day, since we were dismissed 2 hours early. Excited, I rushed home to get my skateboard, but I knew I needed to sneak past Mom so she didn't accuse me of skipping class. But as I passed the kitchen, I saw her sitting at the table sobbing to herself. What was going on? Suddenly, she stood up and walked out to the backyard. There was a leather notebook and a pen on the kitchen table, so I tiptoed over and took a peek. It looked like her diary. Those freshly written lines were stained with tears. Jamie, my baby, I miss you terribly. I want you to live a wealthy, happy life. So I made the ultimate sacrifice. I tell myself every day that you're now a Barnes, not a Smith anymore. Not my daughter anymore. What? I couldn't trust my own eyes. What did these words mean? Could it be... But even if she mistreats me sometimes, she couldn't be that kind of person, right? I tore out that page, then hurried off to the skate park. Only I couldn't concentrate. It was so bad, I messed up my pop shove-it and landed on my butt. Ugh, this was driving me insane. That evening, Mom appeared in my doorway and asked, Charlotte, what did you do this afternoon? I answered, I told you already. I was at school and then the skate park. Did you see my notebook? The leather one? I shook my head in response. Oh, it's my expense book. I can't remember where I left it. She gave another scan around my room before leaving. When she was out of sight, I immediately pulled out my phone and texted Jamie. Jamie, I miss you a lot. Can I come over to your house tomorrow? I needed to see Mr. and Mrs. Barnes. I had to find out what was going on once and for all. Jamie replied she had a date the next day. While I was typing out a reply, she sent me another message. We can't hang out. Please stop contacting me. Okay, that was weird. Did she sense something was up? I checked Jamie's social network profile and noted down the name of her new school. The next morning, I skipped class, went straight to Jamie's school administrator's office to ask for the Barnes' address. Oh, and of course, I made up a convincing story. Jamie's my sister, but then we found out she's actually the Barnes' biological daughter. Now my mom, who raised Jamie all these years, is really sick, and I need to tell her, but I don't know how to reach her. Perfect! She handed me the address and even wished me luck. There was no point wasting time, so I skated my way round to the Barneses. As I rang on their doorbell, I could feel my heart somersaulting in my chest. I introduced myself as soon as they answered the door. Hey, I'm Charlotte, Mrs. Smith's daughter, but I strongly believe I'm not Charlotte Smith because I have something to show you. Then I handed them the torn page from my mom's diary. They both turned ghostly pale, and Mr. Barnes even had to grip onto the doorframe to steady himself. I felt bad for putting them through this. I mean, what if I was wrong? So I suggested, let's just do a DNA test to be sure. A few days later, the Barnes turned up at our house with Jamie. They slammed 2 DNA test results down in front of Mom. I peered down at them. Whoa! Turns out I really am the Barnes' biological daughter after all. Mom gave this expressionless look, but then in a quiet voice she said, I just wanted Jamie to have a wealthy and privileged life. She's not as strong as Charlotte. She needs this more. Please don't blame her. She didn't know anything about this. Then she hugged Jamie and cried. Mr. and Mrs. Barnes looked overwhelmed. Finally, Mr. Barnes managed to find the words to say, Jamie's also like a daughter to us now. We will take care of her like you did with our daughter, but just stay away from us. He pulled Jamie away from Mom and guided her out of the house. Mrs. Barnes hugged me as she started crying. I found myself doing the same. This was my real mom holding me. Whoa, this was so crazy. I packed my things, but as I was leaving, my old mom called me back. Charlotte, I have something to give to you. Then she handed me a small box full of cash. This is your prize money. I put it away for your college fund. You better have it back. I'm so sorry. My sight blurred with tears. Dad was right. She still cared for me. My parents will forgive you. Then you'll soon see both of us again, I said as I hugged her tightly. Then I turned and left. A new life was waiting ahead of me.
Really? You're from Korea? No way. You sound just like a native speaker. Richard jumped up in surprise as I told him I came from South Korea. Yeah, I'm 100% Korean, I answered him, giggling. I had spent hours every day practicing my English. Guess it has paid off. But that was 6 years ago already. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm Korean. At the time I was 21, I joined an online English speaking club where I first met Richard, who never in a million years did I think I'd fall in love with. But that's exactly what happened. Ever since that very first class, we started talking every day, and the sparks between us were undeniable. He always mentioned how he wished I could be in the Czech Republic with him, and I found myself daydreaming about our future wedding. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself, but he was just so amazing. After a month of talking nonstop, I realized I was probably going to fail college if I didn't start setting my priorities straight. But all I could think about was him. And whenever we weren't chatting, I was stalking him on social media. And every time I saw him tagged with another girl, I got so jealous. This couldn't be healthy. I mean, I hadn't even met him in real life. But still, we continued to fall for each other. And he even introduced me to his 2 best friends, Anastasia and Pavel, via video chat. But not as blossoming as my love life. I was failing miserably at college. I'd always been the one who laughed at my lovesick friends, and now I was no better than them. This wasn't right. Something had to change. So even though it was killing me inside to do this, one night before sitting down on my desk to work on my assignment, I just picked up my phone and blocked his WhatsApp, deactivated my Facebook, and all without letting him know. Yep, I full-on ghosted him. It was such a hard decision, because that night, instead of getting anything done for the assignment, I found myself lying in bed with a tear-soaked pillow. It hurt so much, but I had to think about my future. My parents would kill me if I didn't get a good job. I couldn't let them down. Anyway, Pavel messaged me a few days later saying Richard had gone totally crazy and he'd never seen him this upset before. He barely ate anything and would drink all day. He's not much different from a zombie now. But I stayed unfazed. Bet he'd be okay though. He was young and handsome and girls were always after him. He'd get over me soon. And I'd get over him, right? If only it were that easy. I missed him every single day. Even though we'd been thousands of miles apart, he somehow always made me feel so safe, like he was right there next to me. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. Ugh. Instead of wasting time overthinking, it'd be better to put all my energy into my studies for now, right? And it worked. When graduation came around, I was the top student in my class and even got accepted on an exchange program in Australia. Without even thinking, I texted Richard to tell him the good news. I apologized for disappearing on him and said it had messed with my mind because I hadn't expected to fall for him so hard. I had just needed some time to finish my studies, but now I was ready to reconnect again. Well, he'd seen my messages, but there was no reply. It felt like someone had punched me in the heart. Hours later, he finally replied and said, "Sorry, Jenny, I'll get in touch soon. Now isn't the best time." I couldn't believe the words I was reading. I could actually hear the sound of my heart shattering, but it served me right. I was the one who'd gotten rid of him. He deserved better. But still, I stalked him every day online, and then I realized the only way to solve this would be to fly to the Czech Republic and find him. First, though, I had my exchange program in Australia. I bought a new phone and got a new number for the trip to leave my old one in Korea for my uncle who was always complaining about his outdated phone. Those 3 months in Australia were awesome, and I got my mind off things for a little. I was ready to start fresh when I got back from the trip, until my uncle told me that someone had texted me on my old phone, but because he didn't know English, he didn't know if it was for me or not. I immediately checked it, and there was a message from Richard that said, "Jenny, I'm so sorry for my last message. I miss you so much. Your smile, your eyes, your voice. I hope you can give me another chance. Love, Richard." OMG! Months had passed since he'd sent it, and the worst part of all is that my uncle had read the message, and so it said seen. This was a disaster. Okay, but I had to focus on the positive. He missed me. Maybe it wasn't too late. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer, so I texted him and explained what had happened. He finally replied and said he thought I'd given up on him. I'd never give up on him. We then had a proper phone call. "I am still thinking about you all the time. Why didn't you send me a Facebook message?" The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rush, as if I was afraid I would lose contact with him again in any sec. Suddenly, he went all quiet. And then he told me he'd recently met someone, and that he hoped I'd understand and still want to be friends. I felt devastated. Why was it so hard for us? But in the end, there was no other choice for me. I just wished him well and hung up. All I could do now was move on. It was time to find someone else to date. Clearly, Richard and I weren't meant to be. My heart hurt, but I found a job and threw myself into it, giving it all my attention. Eventually, I got promoted, and after 5 years, I was able to help my parents pay off their debt. I even moved up to a management position. Of course, during this time I dated a bit, but I couldn't make any of the relationships last. I just missed Richard all the time. I kept dreaming of us spending Christmas together. It was so frustrating. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't spoken at all. Why couldn't I just get over him? I occasionally went on his Facebook page, but all I could see was his profile pic that remained the same for years. I'd unfriended Anastasia and Pavel, too, so I couldn't stalk them either. For all I knew, he could be someone's husband now, maybe even a dad. And yet still, I never gave up hope that maybe we'd meet in real life, our paths would cross, and we'd finally get to be together. I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a new following request on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was Pavel, and he was now married to Anastasia. This made me so happy. And he told me they were going on their honeymoon to Korea and hoped to see me. OMG, this was so exciting. I desperately wanted to ask him about Richard, but I was terrified to hear that he had kids or something. Anastasia messaged me too and asked how I was doing. I told her I was still single because I worked all the time. Hey, There was no way I could tell her it was because I was still obsessed with Richard. Anyway, the week flew by, and finally I was at the airport awaiting to meet Pavel and Anastasia in real life. They both looked so sweet, and I gave them the biggest hugs. After hugging them, I noticed someone standing behind them. OMG. Was that Richard? What was he doing there? I was so stunned I couldn't move. It was really him. Pavel broke the silence by saying, "We brought Richard along for you, Jenny. Feel free to hit him, bite him, kick him, or whatever you want to do if you think he deserves it." Out of complete shock, I just burst into tears. It had been 6 long years of total silence, and now here he was, looking at me. I asked myself, could I hug him? But I didn't even get a chance to answer my thought because he ran towards me and picked me up in his arms, squeezing me tightly. Then he whispered in my ear, "I'm so sorry, Jenny. Please don't cry. I'm here. I won't leave you. I promise." Could I trust him, though? I was still in shock as I drove them to their hotel, and then again later when I drove to take them out for some Korean food. I was nervous about hanging out with them all, but we seriously had the best night eating, drinking, and laughing. The next day, Pavel and Anastasia would start their honeymoon. So maybe then Richard and I would have some time alone together to talk about whatever was left between us. After dropping them back at their hotel, I was driving away when suddenly I saw Richard running back towards me. He said he wanted to tell me something, so I pulled over and we sat down on a bench to talk. I listened as he told me that over the past 6 years he tried to date other girls, but it never worked out because I was always in the back of his mind. He said he'd spend most of his time working so he could save up to visit me or buy me a ticket so I could come and visit him. It had taken him longer than he'd hoped because his parents had got divorced and he'd been looking after his mom who was super depressed. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so he'd had to work even harder to help her pay for treatment. After 3 long years of fighting, she sadly passed away, and ever since then, he'd been feeling so lonely and sad. One day, he asked Pavel to contact me somehow, and when he found out I was still single, he was over the moon and decided it was finally time to come to Korea and see me. He said seeing me in real life had made him fall even more in love with me, which he hadn't thought was even possible. Then he hugged me tight and I couldn't stop crying. We spent Christmas together, just like I always dreamt of. And well, the rest is history. Here I am now, packing my bags to fly to the Czech Republic to see Richard. I can't wait to meet his family. And you'll never believe it, but we're even planning our wedding. The big question is, where do we live? Should I go there, or should he move to Korea? To be honest, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, it'll be perfect. So it's true what they say. If something is meant to be, it'll be. Even if it takes a year or 6. All I know is that I'm glad I had the patience because I've never been happier. Oh, I've never been in a negotiation that lasted this long before. I've been here since 3, and it's now 8. Worse still, I hadn't even mentioned the funding yet. I've tried, but it was Dane's fault. He kept on interrupting me and going off topic. As I looked at Dane, who was currently reenacting a soccer game with condiments, I wondered how on earth was he a part of the student council. He might have been a senior, but he was an average grade student who didn't seem to excel at anything. He also exaggerated everything and mainly just messed around. I should never have agreed with Dane to arrange the meeting here. Not only had I wasted 5 hours of my life, but it looked like the funding was a no deal. I couldn't take any more of this. Remind me never to listen to Dane ever again. I grabbed my bag and was about to stand up when Mr. Johnson turned to me. "Ruth, I love your idea. Funding all of it would be a bit of a stretch, but I can go to 80%. And if it becomes a yearly thing, I'll be happy to continue sponsoring it." I stared at him open-mouthed. Did I hear him right? Mr. Johnson, the owner of the local music shop, was actually agreeing to provide a big chunk of the funding for our student talent show? "By the way, I like this Dane guy. Today's been fun." Dane wooed, "Yes, it's a dealio," and enthusiastically shook Mr. Johnson's hand. Wait, I was supposed to be the one to close the deal. Never mind. We had the funding. This was amazing. We did it! Dane punched the air. Hey, how did you? He gave a Cheshire cat grin as he replied, "Never expected that, did you? What do you think of me now, Ruth the new president?" I shrugged and laughed. "Hey, how about a celebratory hug, huh?" He lunged at me with open arms. Well, why not? This deserved a celebration after all. We were jumping up and down, and I don't know, maybe I was delirious from the stupidly long meeting or something. But the next thing I knew, we were kissing. OMG! We immediately pulled away from each other and awkwardly looked the other way. After that, he drove me home in silence. Oh no, what was I thinking? Why did I, or anyone breathing, do that? It was Dane. Dane! Can you believe it? Well, okay, I suppose it'd been a difficult couple of months for me. As soon as I became president of the student council, my boyfriend Walter didn't congratulate me. No, instead he broke up with me. We'd been together for 2 years, but recently he'd spoken about marriage and buying a house. Not yet. I want to focus on my career first. But I guess me applying to the students' council and being all busy bee with work frustrated him even more. Now, I tried to distract myself with studying and council work, but I felt like I was getting ever closer to the edge of a cliff, one with hungry sharks circling the bottom. Ugh! And then there were the rumors being spread around school about me. Ruth's just a freshman. She won't be able to hack the pressure. And Ruth's so serious and boring. So I started working harder and harder to prove myself. Hence the talent show project. Only, geez, I was so exhausted, both mentally and physically. This funding news was fantastic. But what was going on with Dane? Maybe he has some kind of secret power of attraction or something. Anyway, after that incident, he flooded me with calls and messages, even though I was crazy busy. After the 12th call in a row, I stopped writing my essay and answered with an annoyed, "What? Hey there, how are you feeling about the weather today?" My name is Ruth, not there, and I don't care about the weather, I'm busy. Busy enough to correct my words like that? I don't think so. Ugh, fine. I agreed to go out for a quick coffee with him just so he'd stop bugging me. I stirred my spoon around my coffee as I glared at him and said, "Will you stop calling me? I need to study." He stuffed the majority of his muffin into his mouth and took ages to chew it. Then he wiped his mouth onto the back of his arm and said, "You do realize all the other council members call you Military Ruth, right? Try not to be so difficult and chillax once, will you?" Wow, that sucked. I didn't expect to be liked by everyone, but I was working my butt off for the council, so they could at least appreciate what I was doing for them. I cleared my throat. I don't care. Work is work. I didn't become the president to make friends. But I know you're not like that, Dane continued. You might be going through a tough time. Still, you're the most stunning person I've ever met. My face brightened up, even blushed. What did he just say? You're beautiful, strong, and independent. He reached out and took my hand, and I tried to ignore the fact it was sticky from his muffin. Ew. I must be the luckiest guy ever to date a girl like you, Ruth. Those other girls are just jealous of you. I mean, you have this hunk, and they don't. Hold up. He said what? Date? I gave him a disgusted, "Who do you think you are?" look. Reading my expression, his face dropped. Oh, I, thought there was something between us. I froze for a few seconds. Was I being too harsh? I mean, he was totally sweet saying those words earlier. Fine. Listen carefully. I'll hang out with you. Not dating. But you have to promise, swear, that you'll never, ever tell anyone about it. I don't know. I mean, he was so immature and annoying, but I guess he was also kind of fun to be around. He made me laugh, and I liked that. All I did was work, work, work. And perhaps that was why Walter broke up with me, wasn't it? Maybe when I hang out with Dane, I should practice being less serious. One Sunday, when we were having brunch at a random cafe of his choice, I asked about his graduation coming up that summer and his plan. Honestly, I haven't thought any further than finishing my freshman year, he said between chewing on his sandwich. How about you? He asked. Well, I want to go to an Ivy League college for a master, of course, preferably Dartmouth, and study social science. Then I want to work for the government, but high up, like a managing role, and really make an impact, Dane shrugged after I finished. Yeah, nice plan. And kept digging in his food. I felt weird. Was I being unrealistic? Or was it just Dane's point of view? But to have a happy relationship, maybe it's best to compromise and accept the differences, right? I snapped myself back into the now. If this whole thing with Dane hadn't happened, I would still be in anguish and despair. It was strange, but I did feel better around him, unlike with Walter. So I should respect his opinions. Gotta learn from my mistake, right? One day, I was at a council meeting planning a fundraiser for the remainder of the talent show money. I decided it was time people saw the real Dane, so I made him event organizer. But this didn't go down well. As in the other council members' eyes, Dane was a lazy, idiotic puppet. Give him a chance. He's the one who persuaded Mr. Johnson to fund the talent show. Please, we never know other people's limits and abilities. Then, this girl, Catherine, sarcastically said, Of course you'd know his ability since he's your boyfriend. You suck at leading. All you care about is your personal feelings. I know. I'll date you. Then I may actually get given a job I deserve. My tongue was tied. I couldn't find a word to defend myself. And at the same time, I was really, really mad at Dane. And worse still, he hadn't even bothered showing up for the meeting. Afterward, I went round to Dane's house and furiously banged on the door. Yelled at him the moment he opened it. How come people know that we've been hanging out? Dane silently scratched his head, eyes open wide, and stared awkwardly at some random spot. Answer me! I continued, but still no reply. I pointed my finger at his face. I just went through a hurricane of rage in a meeting with the council to put you in charge of the fundraiser event. And you didn't even bother showing up. You better do an amazing job, else we'll both be dead. Then I stormed off. Over the next few days, the rumors continued to circulate about me. Clearly, Dane had been bragging to everyone that he'd managed to score himself a stiff girl like me. That I was no tigress, more like a lovely kitten. Now everyone was staring and laughing at me, and made meow sounds at me in the corridors. Someone even filled my seat in the council room with cat food. This was horrible to deal with. But instead of supporting me, Dane went rogue from school for a full week. He also didn't arrange the venue for the fundraiser, meaning we had to reschedule the event. I was left looking bad, so the teacher gave me a lecture on responsibility and strongly advised me to leave the student council. So that's what I did. Catherine's in charge now. After that, I couldn't face school, so I locked myself away in my room and cried as I thought back to all the things that had happened. First, Walter left me. Then everyone else on the council mocked me. Then I lost my position on the council I worked hard for because I put my trust in the wrong person. Ugh, Dane. What he did hurt the most, as he was exactly what others described him as, childish and insensitive. I was torn between never wanting to see him again and also missing him like crazy. Now I had no one. I felt so alone. Ugh, darn it. Loneliness sucked. So when he called me, I answered. He told me he was outside my house. I guess I should at least hear him out, right? Hey, beautiful, listen. He grabbed my hand and looked straight into my eyes. It doesn't matter, okay? The council, the president position, those people don't matter. The most important thing is you being happy, and I'm gonna make you happy. I wanted so much to believe his words. So I let him take me out. We ended up in this noisy restaurant with singing waiting staff. He found it hilarious, but I felt so uncomfortable. Then on the way back, he dragged me into this arcade and left me so he could go on the zombie killing game. As I watched him spin around then shoot, I realized how different we were. I guess I was holding on to him because I'd lost everything else. Who was I anymore? I felt like a stranger to myself. This wasn't me, and Dane wasn't right for me. He rushed over to me and excitingly clung onto my arm. "Ruth, come see my high score." I shook my head and quietly said, "It's over." I pulled my arm free and walked off. After that, I kept to myself, and at school, avoided Dane and my former council members as much as possible. It did hurt when I saw the posters for the talent show around the school, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I did receive a message from Dane saying something about his graduation party, but I skipped it. The truth is, he's just not good for me. Life was a joke to him, and as a result of this, he left me feeling like I was a joke too. I felt so lost. So I'm going to spend the summer with my grandparents out in the country, away from everyone and everything. I need time to heal, so when I come back, I'll be strong, confident, and independent girl I once was. As I really do miss that version of me. Each one of us needs to learn how to overcome things by ourselves, without relying on others, especially when these others in question aren't any good for us.
A lot of kids don't like Mondays, but I do. The start of a new week is full of so many possibilities. And, oh my days, who is she? Whoa, she's beautiful. She is the prettiest girl I've ever seen. She must be new here because I definitely haven't seen her around here before. I'm Evan, and as you can see, I'm kinda short and skinny. I might not be a muscly jock or anything, but I do have a big brain. I'm top of the class in math, sciences, geography, and soy el mejor de la clase en español. I'm proud of my collection of trophies and awards, and as a result, lots of kids in school know who I am. But I don't really like talking to new people. For such a smart guy, I find small talk awkward. It's like the words freeze in my head or something. Anyway, this is the main reason why I've been single for, well, forever. It doesn't matter, I need to focus on my studies anyway. But I do like girls, especially petite girly girls who need me to protect them. Being the smart guy I am, it didn't take me long to find out that the new girl is called Kayla. Kayla. What a sweet name. After a few days of looking through her social media accounts, I'd fallen deep for her. I wanted to tell her how I felt, but I'm just too shy and awkward. So I asked my best friend Liam for advice. Bro, what are you so scared of? You're the #1 guy in this school. Yeah, but only with books. Liam nudged me and said, Only? Dude, it's a big deal being that smart. Girls absolutely love it. You're a bright-looking guy and a top student. Just need to add a little bit of confidence, my friend. I was not sure about that, but what do I know? And Liam is good with girls, so I had to trust him. In fact, I am smart, and I should be proud of it and use it to my advantage. So what should I do to make a move? Now you need to prepare her a gift and surprise her with it in the canteen. Girls love romantic gestures like that. What kind of gift? Don't sweat it. Just get her something you think she'll like. The next day at recess, I carried a box to the canteen. I spotted her sitting with her friends. Oh boy, this was terrifying, but also kind of exciting. As I walked over to her, I noticed how pretty she looked today. Suddenly, she stood up and went to the food stall. Okay, so she was taller than I thought. Yeah, she's quite a bit taller than I thought. Oh no, she's a giant in comparison to me. Abort mission, abort! I turned around and started to walk off when I accidentally bumped into someone and dropped my box. All of my trophies and awards scattered across the floor, along with the love letter I'd written for Kayla. My eyes locked on it, and I was about to leap forward and grab it, but the girl picked it up. Then in a really loud voice said, Oh, look! Evan has a crush on Kayla! Who knew a nerd could have such high standards? Or should I say, tall standards? Then everyone burst out laughing. Oh boy, this was embarrassing, so I hurried out of there. Liam, who had been waiting for me outside, stopped me as soon as I passed the door. Dude, what was that? Are you really giving her those as a gift? He snatched the box out of my hand and took a look inside. Well, you said to get her what she liked. And you also said girls like smart guys, so don't these show off enough of my charm? No, not like that. I just expected you to get her a teddy bear or some flowers. Evan, this ain't it. So this was it. My life was over. I'll be a laughingstock forever. I'll have to convince my parents to let me move schools. No, to let me move planets. Huh? It's from Kayla. What? She says she likes me too. Is this thing broken or something? Wow. She says she's heard a lot about me and she admires my achievements. And she wants to hang out sometime. Not long after that, we started dating. She's such a fun girl to be around. But there's one thing bugging me. She's so tall and standing next to her constantly reminds me that I am so short. It never really bothered me before, but it does when I'm around her. People have always said I'm small-framed, but being next to her makes me feel like I'm a hobbit or something. I decided to bulk up, so I started going to the gym, but it was so hot and sweaty in there, it made me feel sick, so I gave up. I was born this way anyway. There's nothing I can do about it. Meanwhile, Kayla didn't seem to bother that I was smaller than her, and being seen in public with me didn't faze her at all. But I don't know, I just didn't feel comfortable. So after class, when she was waiting for me by the door to go to lunch together, I muttered out some excuse about needing the library, and I'd meet her there in a bit. I know it sounds bad, but I didn't want to hang out with her at school, as I didn't want the other kids gawping at us and making fun of our height difference. I've been in here all lunchtime. I don't want to see Kayla. Oh no, there she is. Phew, she's gone. Oh, why do they put these things so high up? Here, let me. I turned to see it was Kayla. Then she easily grabbed the book and passed it to me. Startled, I peered around to check no one had seen this, and spotted two girls giggling and whispering to each other. This was so humiliating. It was bad enough that Kayla was bigger than me, but she was a sporty girl, so she was also stronger than me. One lunchtime I was struggling to open my bottle of Coke. Suddenly, Kayla appeared, grabbed it off me, and even though I muttered out I wanted to do it, she ignored me and opened it with ease. Then, one night while I was studying, Liam texted me telling me to go check my Insta. There was a picture of me sitting on Kayla's lap in the school garden. What? And then beneath it were loads of comments such as, "Whoa, little baby Evan with She-Hulk Kayla." And one of my friends even said, "Clearly Evan's the wife and Kayla's the husband." No, this couldn't be happening. That afternoon in the school garden, I'd asked Kayla to check my back for an insect bite. But before I could stop her, she'd pulled me onto her lap to check. But some jerk had taken a photo and posted it online saying, "Little Evan is sitting on the lap of his Hulk girlfriend." I was furious, especially with my friend's comment. I mentioned it to Kayla, but she just shrugged and told me they were only messing about and it was no big deal. After that, I didn't want to be around Kayla so much. She just made me feel so small, and I hated being laughed at by the other kids. A few days later, I was running in PE class when I tripped over my own feet and fell so hard onto the ground that I almost fainted. I lay there seeing stars and feeling like an idiot when a load of kids gathered around me. Kayla was also in the sports hall having her training lesson, so she ran over to me and ordered everyone to give me space. Then she bent down and lifted me up in her arms and carried me across the room. This was mortifying. So with the last bit of my energy, I shouted, "Put me down! I'm not a baby!" "Oh, okay. I'm just trying to help you." "I don't need your help. It's embarrassing. It's like you're the man in our relationship. You make me feel inferior." Everyone was gawping at us and whispering. Then Kayla put me down and walked off in silence. She looked upset, and I felt kinda bad. That night, Kayla messaged me asking to meet me in the park. When I got there, she was already waiting for me on a bench. I sat down next to her and said, "Look, Kayla, I'm sorry about before. I was just..." "Stop. I want us to stop. You care too much about what other people think. So what if I'm taller and bigger than you? Who cares? You've never been small or weak in my eyes." I was speechless, and she continued, "You just don't value or appreciate me. I know you avoid me at school. I don't want a boyfriend who's embarrassed to be seen with me. I deserve better than that. So it's over, Evan." Then she stood up and walked off. I watched her go, And even though I wanted to run after her and beg her to forgive me, I didn't. I just sat there all alone, feeling like a fool. That night I thought about it a lot. I knew she was right. I've been a jerk and now I'd lost my amazing, funny, beautiful girlfriend. I shouldn't have let other people's opinions affect me so much because, on reflection, they were irrelevant. I liked her and she made me happy. So what if she could reach books that I couldn't? Thinking about it, she was actually really helpful to have around. A few days later, I texted Kayla to apologize and asked her for another chance, but she didn't reply. So I arrived at her doorstep with flowers in a box. Kayla opened the door and frowned at me. I'm an idiot. A great, big, small idiot. But I really like you, Kayla, and I want everyone to know it. I really like Kayla! Please give me another chance, as I'm miserable without you. She stayed silent for a sec, but it felt like an eternity to me. I felt like I could faint until she spoke up. Yes, she smiled at me. I'll give you another chance, but don't mess it up this time. I leaped into her arms and hugged her. Yeah, she was holding me in the air, but I didn't care. I was just so happy she was my girlfriend again. After that, I passed her the box which was full. No, not of my trophies and awards, but tubs of strawberry ice cream, her favorite flavor. I might be small and Kayla might be tall, and yeah, okay, maybe this does look funny to some people, but I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. I'm just over the moon, stars, hey, the entire solar system that she's agreed to be my girlfriend again.
These need to be washed by hand. Kelly threw a pile of clothes on the floor. And be quick about it! Hey, I'm Maya, and that bossy girl is Kelly. Although we live in the same house, we aren't siblings. You see, when I was just a baby, I was adopted by a loving old couple. They lived on a farm in the countryside. Their kids had grown up and left home, and they were both missing the lively energy that only a child could bring. One Sunday at church, they saw the priest raising a baby girl and offered to help. So that's how they ended up taking me home and bringing me up as their grandchild. They were the nicest people, and they showered me in nothing but love and kindness. I'm always more than grateful for them. We lived together happily until one day, when Grandpa was in the orchard, he collapsed. Sadly, he passed away. Grandma was never the same after that. She'd lost her soulmate. Her health also deteriorated, and then one night she called me into her room, and gripping my hand, she said, "Sweetie, you brought so much joy into our lives. Without us, life could be tough. But don't worry, we're always with you. When I'm gone, go find my old purse hidden in the broken tractor in the back barn. We've saved up a little bit for you. Our little Maya have to live your best life. All right?" Then, before I could ask her any more about this, she closed her eyes, and just like that, she'd left me forever. I stayed with her for hours, crying my heart out. Afterward, following Grandma's words, I went in search of the money. Oh, God! I gasped in shock as I opened the purse. There was at least $20,000 here. How did my grandparents manage to save up such an amount of money? I knew they were thrifty, but this was way too much. After that, I moved to Columbus to live with my grandparents' daughter, Mrs. Madison, and her daughter, Kelly. So you're wondering what I did with the money, right? Well, I keep it hidden here, in this crack in the roof. Oh, someone's coming. Your room is disgusting. Anyway, Kelly and I are going out, so make sure you clean everywhere before we get back. I expect it to be spotless. I gave a weak nod and watched her totter away. This wasn't a new occurrence. Every day, they'd mess up the house, then force me to clean it. I know, I was basically the real-life Cinderella. But it's okay. As soon as I turned 18, I'm gonna leave this place anyway and start living my own life with my money. The next morning, it was raining, so I tried to walk to school as fast as possible, when suddenly, Kelly drove past me and deliberately sped through this big puddle. Mud splattered all over me. Jeez, why is torturing me her favorite hobby? My shirt was filthy. and as I walked toward my locker, some girls laughed at me. One even sneered. The dirty look must be trendy in the countryside, but here it just looks tragic. Yeah, I've been in the city for almost a year now, but I still couldn't fit in. Maybe it's because I always wear the same worn-out clothes and borrow all my books from the library. Mrs. Madison refused to buy me anything new, and I couldn't use my own money, as that would look suspicious. I couldn't even afford to go on the school picnic. I'd never be one of them. Then, during recess, the class monitor, Josie, informed everyone that prom was happening soon, and the dress code was formal. While all the other kids squealed and clapped excitedly, I lowered my head and sighed. I had nothing to wear to prom. Maya? Hearing my name broke me from my thoughts, and I realized it was Josie, and standing around her were some of the nice girls from class. You have to come to prom this time, please. You've never joined us in any other activities before. Don't worry, we will help you look spectacular. I gave an awkward smile and replied, Thanks, guys, but I can't expect you to do that. They all insisted that I should go, but I remained adamant that it wasn't my kind of thing. Then came Meanie Kelly. Maya isn't suitable for this type of event. How dare she say that? I mean, just because I wasn't a spoiled princess didn't mean I wasn't suitable to attend. So I turned to Josie and smiled. Actually, that sounds fun. I will go to the prom. That evening at dinner, I mentioned the prom to Mrs. Madison and suggested that it could be a reward in exchange for doing all the housework. She coldly replied, You live under my roof rent-free, and now you expect me to do housework for you too? Or what, Your Majesty? Then she turned to Kelly, smiled, and asked, Darling, have you decided on a prom dress yet? Then Kelly showed her mom pictures of gorgeous dresses on her phone while throwing smirks at me. Ugh! I couldn't sit around looking at Kelly's smug face anymore. This time, I definitely had to go to prom and be prettier than her. So that weekend, I went thrift store shopping with Josie, and after looking in about a dozen stores, Josie lifted up this really pretty blue gown. It had a tear down the side, but I knew I could easily sew that up and thrift flip it a little. I'd seen people do that on YouTube. The night of the prom, Josie did my hair and makeup, and I showed up in the dress. I felt like a real-life princess, and everyone was looking at me and giving me compliments, while Kelly stood there with her arms folded and a sulky look on her face. Then this boy called David walked over to me and started talking. Turns out, he was the new senior here. All the girls had their eyes on him, including Kelly, who walked over and tried offering him a drink, but he snubbed her and continued talking to me, leaving her standing there in silent anger before storming out of the prom. I had such a wonderful night with my new friends. I arrived home in a great mood and was happily singing to myself, but this instantly changed when I saw Kelly sitting there waiting for me. Such a thief! Now, don't tell me this fancy dress just fell down on you from the sky, Kelly shouted at me. I insisted that I hadn't stolen anything, so she dragged Mrs. Madison to the living room and asked her to check if she had lost any money recently. Mrs. Madison said no without thinking at first, but when she read Kelly's face, she started to fake complaining about some $100 bills missing from her purse, and the two started to jump on me. Ugh! Unbelievable! I ran up to my room and tried to shake away the negative thoughts and think back to how happy I was at prom. Then, as usual, I checked my hiding spot. Huh? What was that noise? I looked towards the stairs, but no one was there. It was probably just the house creaking or something. The next day at school was amazing, as loads of kids stopped and talked to me. Then, when I got home, I went up to my room and double-checked my hiding spot. My heart plummeted in my chest. The purse! It had gone! I frantically searched for it. Then I remembered hearing something last night, and there were only 3 of us in this house. Could it be? Furious, I ran into the living room where Mrs. Madison and Kelly were watching TV. I shouted at them. My money! I want it back right now! In an unconcerned tone, Mrs. Madison replied, What money? What are you talking about? Oh, I see. So you have your own money all along, and have been keeping it for yourself? Poof! What an ungrateful brat! Mom lets you live here even though you aren't actually family, and now you're accusing us of stealing? I knew they'd taken my money, but what could I do about it? I had no choice but to go back to my room and cried as I looked at old photos of me with my grandparents. The next day at school, I really wasn't in the mood for lessons. During recess, I was just staring out of the window in despair when I heard a cough, so I looked and saw David there. Hey, Maya. He smiled at me. Are you okay? You seem kinda down. I'm fine. I gathered up my stuff and left. I know he was only being nice, but I wasn't feeling like small-talking right now. Then, after school, Kelly made me carry her heavy backpack home. I had no energy left to argue, so I glumly did as she asked. That's when David drove up alongside me and asked, Hey, that looks heavy. Do you need a lift? I nodded and got into his car while forcing a smile to thank him. He asked, Maya, what's up? You can talk to me, you know. I'm a good listener. Promise. He's so sweet, and I instantly felt safe around him. We chatted a lot and started hanging out more and more after that. We took walks through the park and had lunch together. I found myself growing closer to him, but not in the way you might think. No, more like a brother. Then, a few weeks later, when Mrs. Madison made me clean up the mess in the house that she'd made again, I found something under her bed. The old purse that Grandma had left me. And the money was all gone! I stormed downstairs and slammed the purse onto the kitchen table, but Mrs. Madison shrugged. It was my mother's purse. Therefore, that money belongs to me. You obviously stole it from my poor elderly parents. Kelly backed up her mom with her annoying tone. Wow, how low do you have to be to con a sick old lady into giving you her life savings? Grandma left it for me, not you! You two are monsters! I screamed at them, took the purse, and went up to my room. I started to pack, then I was leaving here once and for all. Only, when I went to try the door, I couldn't open it. OMG, they'd locked me in! Worse still, in all the drama, I'd left my phone downstairs, so I couldn't even call David for help. The next day, Mrs. Madison let me out, but only on the condition that I did all the housework, and from now on, I wasn't allowed to go to school or anything like that. And if I broke this rule, she'd make sure I ended up in trouble for stealing the money. So, it is what it is. I had no choice. They've got me on a string. One afternoon, I was out front watering the flowers when Mrs. Madison shouted out from the living room. No! Not the roses! Water the ones over there! You useless girl! Then suddenly, I felt someone yank my arm. It's David. He was worried about my absence, so he came to check on me. Maya, there's someone I want you to meet. Then he signaled me to follow him. I had no idea where David was taking me, but anything would be a way better option than listening to any more of Mrs. Harrison's nagging, so I got in his car. He took me to his house, and there was this man in there. I suppose it's David's dad, but then, with tear-filled eyes, the man blurted out, Maya, it's you, my daughter. You're finally home. Huh? What? So, after I sat down and had a sip of water to brace myself for whatever was about to come, the two told me about how when I was a baby, my mom got sick and passed away. My dad struggled to look after me and my brother, so he gave me to a priest. Eventually, my dad managed to turn his life around, and knowing that I'd been adopted by the elderly couple, he started sending money to them to help them raise me. Then, when he came to find me, I wasn't there anymore. He found out that I was living with the daughter of an elderly couple in Columbus, so he moved to this city with the hope of finding me. It was such a coincidence that David ended up attending the same school as me. David said that the first time he saw me, he felt this strange bond right away, and how amazing that this gut feeling was right, as it soon became clear I was his long-lost sister. Wow, this was a lot to take in, but it was the greatest news ever! I left Mrs. Madison's house after that, of course, and moved in with my dad and brother. And for the first time since I'd lost my grandparents, I found myself feeling truly happy again. Now, you're probably wondering what became of Mrs. Madison and Kelly. Well, I was walking past their house the other day and saw a for sale sign in the yard. Turns out, Mrs. Madison had been spending money like water and now was in debt, so she was having to sell the house. I don't want to gloat or anything, but I guess that's karma for them.
Hello, Dana? Have you heard from Vicky yet? I anxiously asked. Vicky hadn't shown up for school, but she wasn't at home either. She'd gone AWOL. And I was frantic with worry, especially as it passed 10 p.m. already. No, this is very out of her character. Martin, tell me what's going on between you two. I facepalmed. Ugh, the word complicated wouldn't even be enough to describe this situation. It's a long story. Let me just tell you from the beginning. It started way back when I was just a kindergarten kid. I met my first ever enemy, Vincent Green. We just didn't see things eye to eye from the get-go. One normal day, I just finished my Lego city when Vincent charged over like Godzilla and smashed it to pieces. And so the war between us continued, one that carried on throughout our school years. He sabotaged everything I did and vice versa. One time when it was my turn to sing in music class, Vincent made fart noises and the whole class burst out laughing. Fair and square, that same day I poured liquid glue over his art collage. Another time he stuck a note on my back saying, "I wet the bed." Seriously, I was getting really paranoid as to why all these kids were laughing and pointing at me. Ugh. So in return, I put this fluffy pink teddy in his backpack. And in class, when he went to pull out his pencil case, the teddy flew out and landed in the middle of the room. Back then, Vincent had already seemed to be quite a girl magnet. I guess they viewed him as a pretty boy, but come on. All kids look the same, right? So I started going around telling everyone, Vincent only wants to play with the girls. Ew, gross. 5 years later, and our feud was still ripe. Vincent was great at studying, and baseball too. He was the PE teacher's favorite. And I know this sounds stupid, but that being flocked by girl thing was no longer gross. It was like a medal of honor. I tried so hard to be better than Vincent in everything. I was also one of the top students. I joined the soccer team. And I also had girls surrounding me. Still, that was not enough. Not until Vincent accepted his defeat. But then middle school started, and guess what? Vincent wasn't there. Finally, I was free of him. Now I could stay on top, flirt with girls, and become basketball captain without him trying to sabotage me. All eyes were on me, and it was fantastic. Although there was a small part of me that missed the competitiveness. Then on another day, like every other day in high school, I was walking along the corridor and noticed that all the girls were getting in a frenzy about something. "What's going on?" I asked my best friend Tyler when I arrived at my locker. "Not sure. It's probably the new boy or something. Girls are squealing all over the place." I didn't feel good about this. And then, just like in those slow-mo Korean drama scenes, the new boy ambled along the hall charmingly smiling, one hand holding a baseball bat, the other air-shooting girls. My face was slowly getting hot. Eyes goggled at the new boy. Yes, it was Vincent. He slid past me, sneered and winked. What a lousy jerk. That was definitely another declaration of war. A few days later, I saw Vincent everywhere, applying for class president, competing for the baseball team captain position, and flirting with pretty much every girl in school. Ugh, he was like a bad rash that wouldn't go away. To make it worse, his grades from previous schools somehow ended up published online, which made everyone go giddy for him. Ugh, Vincent Green, you just wait for it. However, he would have to probably wait forever, because I was ready to give up all the competitive intentions the moment I met Vicky. It was at lunchtime. I was having lunch with Tyler in the school garden when Dana, Tyler's girlfriend, came over. Behind her was an angel. I was stunned, mouth wide open. My half-eaten sandwich even fell from my hand. Dana said, "Hi boys, this is Vicky, my best friend. She used to be my neighbor until her family moved away. But she's just transferred back here now." Vicky gave us both a friendly smile. I, of course, took that chance and befriended her right away. Soon, Vicky and I started hanging out. When I was with her, it felt like everyone else had been muted. She was this ray of light in the darkness. She was perfect for me. Smart, beautiful, exquisite. And she was the only girl in school who didn't go all fluttery around Vincent. Actually, she hadn't so much as mentioned him once. I invited her over to my house, and my parents liked her so much they asked her to stay for dinner. Afterward, Vicky suggested watching a movie. The time whizzed past, and soon it was 10 p.m., and she had to leave. Let me take you home," I insisted. But she told me her brother was already on his way. So I led her down to the living room to wait. The doorbell rang. I went to answer to find Vincent standing there. We both froze and glared at each other. What on earth was he doing here? That's when Vicky walked over to him and said, "Let's go." Then she turned to me and kissed me on the cheek. Aw, sweet. But I couldn't think about this right now. Why was my mortal enemy at my front door? Vincent grunted. Vicky, what's going on here?" I also snarled. "Yeah, Vicky, what's he doing here?" Despite the death stares we were giving each other, she just shrugged. "Oh, Vinny, this is my boyfriend Martin. Martin, this is Vincent, my brother." Brother? My wonderful and perfect girlfriend is Vincent Green's sister? No. Yo, you're dating this loser? Vincent pointed a shaking finger at me. You are really that jerk's sister? I was trembling even more, while Vicky seemed unbothered as she walked toward the car. Vincent immediately growled at me. "Stay away from my sister," before he quickly chased after her. I stood there deadly still, a horrified look on my face. I probably resembled some sort of gargoyle. No way. How could an amazing girl like Vicky be related to that jerk? The next day, Vicky texted me to meet her at the cafe. "We need to talk." Uh-oh, no man ever wants to hear those words. Talk about a bad omen. But we were meant to be going on a double date with Tyler and Dana tonight, weren't we? I entered the cafe to see Vicky sitting there, looking all sulky with her arms folded. Oh no, this didn't look good. Before I even had a chance to sit down, she blurted out, "Martin, why have you never told me about your arch enemy? Do you have any idea how big of a fight Vincent and I had last night?" I sat there open-mouthed. Truth was, since meeting Vicky, I no longer cared about Vincent or our war. I only wanted to focus on Vicky. She made me so happy. I explained this to her, and she replied, "Vincent still hates you. He's forbidden me from meeting you again. Of course, I'm not listening to him, but I want you to both solve this dumb feud." "There is nothing to solve. He started this back when we were just little kids. He's a grade A jerk." I started to get heated. Vicky sighed. "I mean it. You guys need to talk. As for me, I'm not going to let Vincent tell me who I can and can't see. I was so mad at that dude, I just refused to understand her words. I repeatedly came back at her that I didn't want to solve anything with Vincent. Then it got worse. Being as stupid as I could, I blurted out, "It's either him or me, so who's it going to be?" Vicky furiously stood up, shouted, "How dare you make me choose a side? I love you, but that's my brother," then stormed off. Did she just say she loved me? Oh man, what had I just done? To my surprise, the double date still went ahead. The four of us were in this Italian restaurant, but Vicky hadn't said a word. This was so awkward. When Vicky was in the restroom, Dana gave me a piece of advice. "You should listen to Vicky. Go make peace with Vincent." Then, to my annoyance, Tyler also agreed with Dana. I ignored that and asked Dana to take Vicky home. Later, we got into another big fight on the phone. I couldn't understand why she kept telling me to reconcile with that idiot. Just because she didn't want to stand between two rivals? Furiously, I said, "I hate your brother. So there's no way I'm going to reconcile. If you love me, you'll be on my side." Vicky yelled out, "Both of you are so childish, and neither of you care about my feelings." Then she hung up. So that was the story. Now this brings you up to date, and I have zero clue as to where my girlfriend is. I need to find her, and if that involves putting my differences with Vincent aside, then so be it. So I called everyone to the park, including him. "What you two did to Vicky was so obviously wrong," Tyler spoke up. "Being stuck in the middle of her bro and her boyfriend must suck. Neither of you even stopped to consider her feelings." Dana continued. "Vicky loves you both very much. Don't make her choose. You guys should talk." Then both of them stood up and left us there. Vincent and I sat in awkward silence for a while. Eventually, he cleared his throat. "I have to admit that I've been envying you. All the girls adored you. You're smart and great at sports. Vicky falling for you proves that you'd finally defeated me. That's why I got so mad. I looked at him with wide eyes. That was exactly what I thought about Vincent. I always felt like second fiddle to him. Always. I told him this, then we both scratched our heads and laughed. Then I said, "Geez, what a couple of insecure losers we are." Vincent replied, "Yeah, we're both pretty stupid for a pair of smart guys. Truce?" He held out his hand and I shook it. We realized that no amount of attention could compare to the love we got from our girl Vicky. Suddenly, something popped up in my head. I know where Vicky is," I said. "Let's go, Uncle Vinny." Vincent and I called Tyler and Dana, and then we went to the 24/7 cafe, where Vicky usually took me. There I found her dozing on a couch on the second floor. I gently shook her and said, "Wakey, wakey, sleeping beauty. You gave us all a fright." When she saw that Vincent was there too, and we weren't biting each other's heads off, she gave this huge smile. After that, we all sat down and chatted over hot chocolates and cookies. Finally, the infinity war between two rivals had come to an end. I no longer have an enemy. Instead, I have a new close friend. It's funny how things turn out sometimes, isn't it? Now I'm a part of a group of 5 wonderful people, especially my girlfriend. What more can I ask for? Life is beautiful.
I was on my way to Julia's house for a study sesh when out of nowhere I found myself flying onto the ground. I was so stunned, I didn't even see the ball that had hit me, or the fact there was a cute guy rushing over to check if I was okay. He helped me up and apologized. Then he pulled a Band-Aid out of his bag. Oh my, who is he? I'd scraped my hand pretty badly, but I almost didn't mind because now I was face to face with a gorgeous guy. In fact, I was so busy staring at him and blushing that I didn't even notice Julia marching towards us.
What are you two doing?
Turns out the cute guy was Callum, Julia's boyfriend. Ugh, Julia. Of course. Every nice thing is always hers. I'm Jenny, by the way, and that lucky girl is Julia. She's the daughter of the richest guy in town, Mr. Walsh. We're supposed to be friends, but we honestly have nothing in common. I mean, my family is pretty poor. It's not our fault, though. My dad sadly passed away, and so it's just me and my mom trying to make ends meet. Julia, on the other hand, has a silver spoon shoved down her throat. But fate still brought us together. I know it's kind of wrong, but that night I couldn't stop thinking about Callum. He now, in fact, gave me motivation for the next study session with bossy Julia, as maybe he would be there again. I even put on makeup and skipping on the way to her house the next day. But, well, it was all for nothing, because Callum was nowhere to be seen. Instead, I had to sit and listen to Julia go on and on about her trip to Paris. I pretended that I was okay, but actually, I always dreamed of visiting the city of light and gazing up at the Eiffel Tower ever since watching Emily in Paris. Dream on, Jenny. Anyway, Julia was incessant. She loved making me look like a fool, and even said, "Aw, poor Jenny. Maybe one day you'll get to go to Paris. But until then, you can just look at all my photos." Honestly, why was she so cruel to me? Last year around my birthday, she'd even shown me a fashion magazine and asked me which dress I liked best. I thought she was buying gifts for me, but instead, she showed up at my party in the exact dress I pointed out. I couldn't believe it. She just winked at me and laughed, and I seriously wanted to scream at her. Anyway, after looking at about 1 billion Paris pics, Mr. Walsh appeared. He looked happy to see us sitting so close and studying together. If only he knew the truth. But I had to pretend I had a lot of fun with Julia and helping her study, at least for his sake. Mr. Walsh was a good friend of our family, and ever since my dad passed away, he'd been looking out for me, and was even paying my school fees. I couldn't let him down. But you know what? I actually started to get excited to go over to Julia's now, as the thought of bumping into Callum again gave me butterflies. I even got myself a new hairstyle, but he was never there, and I always left feeling disappointed. Then one time, after school, it started to rain dogs and cats, and I had to run for it. Then suddenly I felt an umbrella over my head. Guess what? It was Callum coming to the rescue. It was like something out of a romantic movie. He even offered me a lift home. My heart was racing so hard I was afraid he'd hear it. I just sat there in silence, dripping rain all over his clean car. I even caught him looking over at me a few times, and my heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. He pulled up at my house, so I was about to get out when he touched my arm and said,
Can I get your number?
I was confused. I mean, wasn't he Julia's boyfriend? He then explained that he was just hired to be her fake boyfriend so that all the flirty boys would get out of her way. Wow, I couldn't believe it. He asked me to keep it a secret as Julia would end us both if this story got out. Okay, it all made sense now. That's why he never came over to her house. I felt so happy. Over the next few days, Callum and I chatted a lot on the phone, and then eventually he asked me out on a date. We went to the fun fair, and right away he held my hand. It made me feel so special, and I never wanted him to let go. We were having so much fun. Then a familiar voice pierced the air. Well, well, well. Isn't that my dear friend, Jenny? I felt dread rush through my whole body. We turned around, and there was Julia and her girl gang all standing there with their arms crossed. Callum dropped my hand and rushed to Julia's side.
It was all her, babe. You gotta see the messages she sent. She's been flirting with me for weeks. It's pathetic.
Whoa, was he for real? A second ago he was about to lean in for a kiss, and now he was bad-mouthing me? How could he be so two-faced? I tried to explain to Julia, but she wouldn't listen. She just called me a traitor in front of everyone, and told all her friends to lock up their boyfriends in case I try it on with one of theirs next. I was devastated. Everyone was staring at me and judging me. Ugh, if only I could vanish into thin air right now. And as I was thinking about where I could escape to, a guy appeared, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me away. It was Stefan, the guy who lived across the road from me. I didn't understand why he helped me, but I was so grateful that he did. He walked me home and tried to cheer me up by saying how his mom used to love our bakery so much, and that the carrot cake my mom made was his mom's fave. This made me smile, thinking back on all those happy times in our family bakery. When my dad had died, we'd had to sell it to pay off some debt, and life had become quite difficult. Luckily, Mr. Walsh was helping out, but after what just happened with Julia, I wasn't sure I'd be able to face him. The next day at school, everyone was staring at me. I couldn't even find a place to sit at lunch. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. And then it got worse. My phone beeped. It was Mr. Walsh. He said he was so disappointed in me and that I no longer needed to come and tutor his daughter. I wanted to cry, and at the same time I felt so much relief. But then I read on and he said,
I'm sorry, but I can't keep my promise anymore. I'll continue to subsidize your school fees, but you'll have to figure something out for college. Good luck.
My heart plummeted. Not only had I been shunned by everyone at school and backstabbed by Callum, but now the door to college was being slammed in my face too. What would I do? My life was over. I felt so sick. I just walked out of the canteen and went home. I didn't dare go to school over the next few days. I was miserable. And just when I'd given up all hope, there was a knock at my door. It was Callum. What was he doing here? He said he was sorry for what had happened and that he missed me so much. Then he asked me if I'd be interested in being his secret girlfriend. What in the world? I was so angry, I wanted to slam the door in his face, but he was fast enough to catch my hand, which took me aback. At that exact moment, Stefan happened to walk past. Seeing me standing there with Callum, his face changed and he immediately walked away. Oh, no. I definitely couldn't let him misunderstand anything about me anymore. He's the only friend I had left. I yanked my arm away from Callum and chased after Stefan. I finally caught up with him and blurted out how I'd been feeling like the whole world was against me and that I didn't know what to do. He told me to calm down, then we went to sit on a bench in the park, as he let me confide everything in him. By the time I finished talking, I was on the verge of tears. Then he said,
Listen, Jenny, you're better than this. Don't dim to fit in with those people at your school. Good people will see you for the real you. You're strong, and you can get through anything. I know you can.
He was right. I was better than this. I didn't need to sink as low as Julia and her friends, and I certainly didn't need to rely on Mr. Walsh's money. I'd figure this out by myself, like I always did. So I applied for a part-time job at a coffee shop. Earning my own money felt so good. Suddenly I felt free, and I knew everything was going to be okay. But then one day when I was working, Julia and her gang came in. They still weren't over what happened, and in front of everyone, they brought up what I'd done to humiliate me, and they even recorded it, and I couldn't stop shaking. This was too much. That's when I threw a cup of coffee all over Julia and ran out of there. Julia shouted after me that she was going to tell my mom everything I'd done. Without a doubt, Julia really did it. She even sent my mom photos of me and Callum at the fair. And well, my mom didn't take it well. I rushed home to try and explain after Mom yelled at me over the phone, but then I couldn't find Mom anywhere. I called her phone and a man answered. He said my mom was in a hospital after she fainted? Oh dear good God! I got to the hospital immediately and found out that she had collapsed from shock, but thankfully she was okay. She had to stay in the rest of the day to be monitored, so I went to get us both a cup of coffee. That's when I saw him. Callum. He was in the ward next door sitting with some girl. I almost dropped the coffee out of shock. They looked close. I waited until he'd left, and then I went to ask the girl if Callum was her boyfriend. Well, turns out they'd been dating for 2 years already. So he was triple cheating? The girl deserved to know the truth, so I took a deep breath and told her everything. She was so upset. We decided to get our own back. So the girl called Callum and asked him to come back. As soon as he arrived, we confronted him and got the truth once and for all. He was never Julia's real boyfriend. In fact, here's the shocking part. He was hired by Julia to pretend to date me and ruin my life. Apparently, she was jealous of how much attention her dad gave me since my dad had died, and that her dad constantly compared her to me. He kept apologizing to his girlfriend, saying how much he loved her, and that he only agreed to help Julia so that he could earn some money to help pay for her medical bills. I was stunned. Callum was so apologetic and said he'd come clean about everything. He posted it on the school forum to clear my name, and to everyone to see the ugly truth about Julia. And of course, when Mr. Walsh saw it, he made her come and apologize to me. And he also apologized himself and offered to pay my college fees again. Do you think I accepted his offer? Of course not. I was standing on my own feet now, and there was no going back. I didn't need anyone's help. So you might be wondering how I could afford college. Surely not on my coffee shop salary, right? Well, after graduating high school, I realized how much I missed the bakery. That was where I truly felt happy. So I decided to study to become a pastry chef, and now my mom and I have opened a new bakery. I've never been happier, and there's one last thing I want to share. Oh, in fact, here he is. Hey, Stefan, I've made your mom's fave. Let's go surprise her. I couldn't stop smiling as Stefan took the carrot cake, kissed my cheek, and we headed for his car. Life is so much more simple now, and sweet, and I love it.